Guys, it's your friendly neighborhood webware fanatic, and today we're looking at all the aggression events in Marvel Champions. So let's go ahead and get started here with our first event, which is as one. It says alliance, so you can pay for this card as a group if you're playing in multiplayer. As a hero action attack, exhaust an Avenger character and a Guardian character. Deal X damage to an enemy, where X is the combined attack of those characters. This attack gains overkill. And then it does bypass a couple of different things, right? So if you're exhausting an Avenger's ally or a Guardian ally, that ally will not have to take consequential damage because it's not making a basic activation, right? So it just gets exhausted through this card's effect. And then you might be able to bypass an instance of retaliate because that character is not attacking. But whoever is playing this card, whatever identity plays this card, this is an attack for that character, that identity. So if you are playing this card, you will take a retaliate yourself, and then you can do the combined damage. So I mean, it's equal to your attack. So if you have ways to buff up your attack, right? Like there is an aggression upgrade, brute force. So if you play a card like this, your hero gets +1 attack, and then there's a force response here. After you make a basic attack, you have to discard brute force because it's a force response. So if you play cards like this where you're buffing up your attack, it might be useful for you to not make a basic attack activation and just exhaust yourself to do damage, which is equal to your attack plus another character, right? But I mean, even then, there are better cards that do that. I think that because it's 2 costs, because another cost is that you have to exhaust an Avenger and a Guardian, right? So that means you have to be playing an Avengers deck and a Guardian deck if you're doing it in solo, which I do kind of hold against it because, I mean, it's going to be hard to have that, right? If you have an Avenger out and you're playing an Avenger deck, if you have an Avengers ally, it won't work with just that ally. You need to have a Guardian ally too, right? So it's kind of splitting the deck in half. In solo, in multiplayer, it's a little bit easier, but I mean, you got to choose the identity. I don't know. I think that this card, there's definitely way better ways of utilizing your hero's attack stat without this card, right? Like, and I think we'll look at a card later on that does a better job of this, but I mean, I think this card is not very good. I think there's better versions of it, so it definitely goes in D tier for me. I think this card is pretty much unusable here because usually I don't hold being trick locked against a card, but you have to exhaust an Avenger character and a Guardian character, so you have to mix the deck with half, and then if you have an Avengers character, you may not have that Guardians character at the same time, right? So you need both. In multiplayer, I mean, it's better because you can just play with an Avengers hero and a Guardian hero. But then, like, this card is going to be a little bit better with an ally, right? Because you can at least prevent a consequential damage with that ally. And then, yeah, I mean, I don't think this card is worth it at all. I think 2 costs is way too expensive for this type of card. Okay, next we can take a look at Bombs Away. This is a 2-cost event. Hero action, exhaust an aerial character you control and choose a player. Do 3 damage to the villain and each minion engaged with that player. So this card, one thing that's cool about this card is that it's not an attack, right? There's no attack keyword like the as one. So this is not considered an attack, which means it will bypass stuff like retaliate and guard. And then all you have to do is exhaust an aerial character you control, and you can choose any player. So if you're playing an aerial deck, right, like if you have an aerial minion, or if you are a aerial character, you can do 3 damage AoE to all the minions and the villain, and it'll bypass guard and all that stuff. So 2 for 3, I think it's not the best curve if it's just a villain, but the fact that you can get that AoE, I think it's pretty nice. Still a situational card because you need to have a lot of minions to get the full benefits of it. But I think this card, if you're playing aerial, you have to exhaust an aerial character. Yeah, it goes into C tier. If you didn't have to exhaust any aerial character, obviously it won't be trade locked to aerial anymore, but I would definitely put it in B tier. And then, yeah, if you could do more concentrated damage, I mean, you need to have the minions out and you need to get exhausted, right? So I think it's a situational card. In the correct situation, it can be good, and that situation is you have tons of minions out on the field, and you just kill them off for 3. That could be very valuable. But in a situation where you don't have that, it's not going to be as good. Next we have Bring It. It's a 0-cost event, max 1 per phase. Hero action, draw 1 card for each minion engaged with you. So this card, even though it's also contingent on minions like the Bombs Away, I think this effect is way more valuable than the Bombs Away, right? Bombs Away is 2 costs to do like 3 damage to everyone. Bring It is just, it's for free because it's a 0-cost card, and then you're drawing 1 card for each minion engaged with you. There's so many broken strategies that you can play with Bring It where you're drawing like up to your entire deck because you're like purposely getting swarmed with minions, right? This is definitely a card that you want to build around if you're playing aggression. You don't have to build around it, but it's a card that you can build around and be very successful building around it. Its effect is an S tier level type of card, but I'm going to put it in the A tier because I think that You draw one card for each minion engaged with you. There is a decent amount of setup that you need for that, right? If you draw this card and there's no minions and you have no ways to get a minion out, it's a dead card, right? It's not going to be useful in every situation, so I don't think it's an auto include. It definitely is if you're playing a minion heavy type of deck where you're trying to draw out a lot of minions and stuff like that. So definitely a very powerful card with a very powerful effect, but not an auto include for me for aggression. Next we have Browbeat. This is a 2-cost event. Play only if your identity has the Avengers trait. Hero action attack, deal 2 damage to the villain, deal X damage to the villain to a max of 3, where X is equal to the villain's stage number. So it's like 2 attacks there, right? You can do 2 damage to the villain, and then you do another whatever damage, but it's contingent on whatever the stage number is. So at best, you can get, currently there's only 3 villain stage numbers, right? So you can do 2, or the max is 3 anyways, right? So the max you can do is 5. 2 for 5 is pretty good. It's not crazy. It's not like better than like an identity specific type of attack, but it is very good for an aggression attack. 2 for 5. I mean, it's not terrible, and it's 2 different instances, and you can hit the same character. Well, no, it has to go on a villain. Oh, okay. So the fact it has to go on the villain, I think that makes it kind of limiting. I'll put in a C tier here. I think that in the correct situation, it can be good. I think Bombs Away is going to be a little bit more versatile because it hits everybody. And then Browbeat, yeah, it's only to the villain, so it doesn't help you out with clearing out minions or anything like that. It's 2 instances of damage, but both at the villain, so not my favorite card. Yeah, definitely you have to be playing against villains like expert mode and the villain stage number 3 to get the full effect, which is 2 for 5 damage, right? So you can do 2 and then 3. But even then, I mean, yeah, it's not like a crazy card or anything like that, just because your identity specific event is usually going to be doing more damage, but it's a great way to get more damage, I guess, for a pretty good efficiency if it's 5. Yeah. Next we have Chase Him Down, 0-cost event, response Thor. After your hero attacks and defeats an enemy, remove 2 threat from a scheme. So this is an OG aggression event from the core box. It's still pretty decent right now, right? It is contingent that you defeat an enemy and you can remove 2 threat from a scheme. This is a Thor activation, even though it is a response, so you can't bypass stuff like Patrol, and obviously you can't remove threat from a scheme that has a, if there's a crisis icon in play. But I mean, 0 cost to get 2 threat off, it's not bad. I'm going to put this in a B tier here. I think because it's 0 cost, I mean, it definitely doesn't hurt to have in your deck, but it is contingent on having minions out, similar to Bring It, right? If there's no minions for you to defeat, then you can't remove 2 threat from scheme. Actually, well, there is, right? Actually, I forgot about the villain, right? So if you flip the villain from stage 1 and stage 2, that is considered defeating an enemy. So if you do that, you can also remove the 2 threat from the scheme. But yeah, I mean, still not the best card and not a super powerful effect, but a decent effect that can come in useful every now and then, right? Just being 0 cost and 2 threat. Next, we have Clobber. It's a 2-cost event, hero action attack. Deal 3 damage to an enemy. If this is the first card you have played this round, return this card to your hand. So I'm actually a huge fan of Clobber. It's 2 for 3, right? Which is not the most efficient type of thing, but if it's the first card you play, you can get it back to your hand. And usually, I mean, this type of condition is a fairly easy condition to meet. So usually whenever I'm playing Clobber, or if anyone I see is playing Clobber, it is the first card that they play, so you get it back to your hand. So it's kind of a 1-cost card almost, right? Because you get to return this resource here back to your hand, and you can play it back down again, or use it as a resource. So 1 for 3 I think is pretty good, especially because it's not contingent on your hero making an attack. It just has to be the first card played. So this card goes in a B tier for me. I think it's a fairly easy condition to meet, and if I have an empty rush spot in an aggression deck, I mean, Clobber is a more than welcome card. Next we have Critical Hit, 2-cost event, play only if there is a side scheme in the victory display. Hero responds after you attack an enemy, stun it. So I mean, I don't like cards like this where you have to make an attack, right? So if you are stunned or if you're exhausted, you can't make a basic attack, and then you could also play an attack event, which I think gives it more versatility because it's not a basic activation. So yeah, and you can't get this card like super early because you have to have at least 1 side scheme in the victory display. It's not terrible because you can stun an enemy. For me, I'm gonna put this card in the C tier because stuns already make it a little bit situational, right? I'm gonna put it, it's close to Browbeat for me. So stuns already make it a situational card because if the villain has steadier stalwart, the stun is less effective. And then it's even more situational because you have to have a side scheme in a victory display. So you got to do something else first to get set up for this. and then it's a hero response, right? So you have to have an attack first, either a basic attack activation or play another attack event before you use this card. And you got to pay 2 costs for a response. So I don't really like it. I'm actually going to put it behind the Browbeat. It's a situational card. It can be useful to get that stun off, but I think it's pretty expensive in a lot of conditions that you have to meet for it. Next we have Dive Bomb. It's a 4-cost event. Play only if your identity has an aerial trait. Hero action attack. Do 7 damage to an enemy. Do 1 damage to each other enemy. So I mean Dive Bomb is a very good card. I'm going to put Dive Bomb in the A tier, and I'm going to put it behind Bring It. I think Dive Bomb is a very, very good card. And the thing is, oh man, I'm kind of being biased towards it because it's really good with Hone Technique, right? So this is a another aggression upgrade here, Hone Technique. So a very popular aggression upgrade. It's 3 costs. And when you play an aggression attack event, if you pay for that event using a mental resource, you can increase the amount of damage that event deals by its printed cost. So fortunately, Dive Bomb is very expensive, being a 4-cost event. It does 7 damage and 1 to each other enemy. So if you play this with Home Technique by using a mental resource to play this card, 4 plus 7 is going to be 11 to whoever you want, and then 5 AoE all around. So that's such a powerful effect when combined with Home Technique. But the thing is, even if you don't play this with Home Technique, it's still not a terrible card. It's a great, I mean, it's not going to be as good, but outside of identity-specific events, it's pretty hard to get massive instances of damage, right? I think 7 damage might be one of the highest instances, other than probably like in the pool aspect. But yeah, I mean, just being able to do 7 damage, 4 is very expensive for it if you're not playing it with Home Technique. But 7 is a huge burst, then 1 to everyone else. I think that's a pretty good effect. Should I put it in the C tier? No, I think it is an A tier card, because even if you're not playing it with Home Technique, no, I mean, at the same time, you're not really ever playing Dive Bomb without Home Technique. So does that make it go? But this is a card that is built around a lot. Yeah, I'm a little bit conflicted. I think that I'm going to put it in the A tier. I think it's a very strong card, but it's very situational because you need to have, I'm not really considering the aerial thing because we're just going to evaluate this card as if we're playing with the aerial hero, but it's contingent on really using Home Technique with it. And if you don't, I think it drops in value. But I'm going to have an A tier because I think it's still decent, just not nearly as good anymore. Next we have Dropkick, a 3-cost event, hero action, attack, deal 4 damage to an enemy. If you pay for this card using only physical resources, stun that enemy and draw a card. So Dropkick easily goes in the A tier for me. And do I like it more than, yeah, I don't know. I'm gonna put it right here for now. So 3 for 4 is not the best, but you can get a stun out of it, and you're doing damage, and you can draw a card. So I like how Dropkick is not tied to anything, right? It's the limiting thing is that you can only pay for it with physical resources. But most of the time when you're playing aggression, a lot of aggression cards are physical resources, because look, it's a fist right here, fist right here, fist right here, right? Fist right here. A lot of aggression cards. I mean, aggression is just the type of aspect that deals a lot with physical resource, right? And it makes sense because, you know, you're aggressive, it's aggression, you're like punching people, right? So you have that punch resource there. And then, so I think Dropkick is a pretty versatile card and fits pretty well in aggression. And unlike something like Critical Hit, you can play Dropkick right from your hand and then just do that stun on the enemy, right? You can do that right away, and you get to draw a card, which makes up for its cost, right? It does kind of hurt that you have to pay the 3 costs up front, but drawing 1 back I think is pretty useful. It's definitely a card that you build around as well to stun lock the villain or anything like that. So yeah, I mean, it's almost a 2 for 4 plus a stun, which is insanely valuable. And I'm actually gonna put this event number 1 to A tier for right now. I think it's better than Bring It, because this works in basically any scenario that the villain can be stunned. And even if the villain can't be stunned, it's not terrible. I definitely played it to where the villain's not getting stunned and I'm just drawing a card out of it. I mean, it's not going to be nearly as good, but I mean, I think that it works past those type of situations. And if you do have the triggering requirement for it, its effect is like an S tier level card. I think it's a very, very powerful card. Next we have, I don't know how to say that, Fusilade. It's a 2-cost event. Hero action attack, exhaust a weapon upgrade you control, then deal 5 damage to an enemy. So it's effectively a 2 for 5, but you have to have a weapon upgrade, and you don't want to exhaust a weapon upgrade to do whatever it needs to do, right? So if you have weapon upgrades like Jorm, I'm not spelling that right. think it's with the B first. Right, so if you have a weapon upgrade like this, right, after your hero attacks an enemy, spend a physical resource, do 2 damage to an enemy, right? So that's another one of the physical things right there that we are just talking about. But if you have a weapon upgrade like this, Jarm does not need to be exhausted to trigger its effect, so it works very, very well with the Fusillade, right? But if you have an event or an aggression weapon, like let's talk about the hand cannon, for example, right? So the hand cannon says here, when your hero makes a basic attack, exhaust the hand cannon, then remove 1 charge counter from it, right? So this card, you need to exhaust to trigger its effect. So if you need to exhaust that, you're already exhausting and you're not going to get the +2 from this. And then you're doing 5 damage to enemies, so you can kind of subtract that. It's not really 5 damage. It's really going to be 5 minus 2 is 3 damage, because whatever weapon upgrade that you exhausted, if you could do damage with that, it's not going to be that much. At the same time, there is a benefit because you don't have to lose a charge counter from here, which is kind of nice. But if you're making like a big push or anything like that, this card could not be as good. 2 for 5 is similar to Browbeat here, right? If you hit this condition. But I think that it's a little bit easier to hit the condition for Fusillade than Browbeat. So I'm going to put it above Browbeat. And all you really need is to have a weapon upgrade for your control. If you're playing here with a bunch of weapon upgrades like Venom, I think this card is even better, because then you don't really care if one is exhausted, or if you're playing with the Jarm that we're just looking at, which doesn't need to be exhausted. Is it as good as Bombs Away? No, I do like Bombs Away more. I think that AoE is going to be a little bit more valuable. And in fact, it's not an attack activation. Gives you even more versatility. But yeah, Fusillade, I think it's a situational card. You need to have the weapon, and then its effect isn't like an A tier level effect if you do have the weapon, but it's definitely decent. Next, we have a 0 cost event, Get Over Here. Hero action attack, deal 1 damage to the minion. If you have the aerial trait, engage that enemy. So this card, I'm going to put this card last in the C tier. I think it's also very, very situational. So in the case where, so one less situational effect is that if you are stunned, this is a 0 cost event, which is an attack activation. So it's a 1 card you can pay to get rid of your stun. But that's going to be situational for if you are stunned. And if you're not stunned, it just deals 1 damage, which isn't that good for 1 cost, or it's for 0 cost, I mean, but you have to actually play the card from hand, so it's 1 effective cost. And then if you have the aerial trait, you can engage the enemy. So this is really for Thor, because Thor has aerial trait with his hammer, and then whenever he engages an enemy, he gets to draw 2 cards with Have at Thee. So in case you guys don't know what I'm talking about, let me pull up Thor really quick. So Thor has a response here, Have at Thee. After you engage a minion, draw 2 cards. So if you play a card like this in multiplayer, there's a minion in play that you're not engaged with, like if your friend has it, then you play this card, you do 1 damage to it, and then that minion is now engaged with you, and you can draw 2 cards with Thor. So in that very, very specific situation with only Thor and in multiplayer, this card can be very good. But I think I can't really think of any other situation where this card can be good. In solo, it's not going to be that good with Thor, because all minions in solo are already engaged with you. And then, yeah, I mean, and you need the aerial trait, so you need to have Thor's hammer out to give him aerial. So yeah, not a good card, but in that specific, super duper specific situation, it goes in C tier. I think for everyone else, it goes in the D tier, but I'm going to put it here just because of Thor. And I mean, I guess for the stun as well, for Thor, and also if you want to take a minion away from someone else and give it to yourself, because you want to take damage, right? So for example, I think Spider-Ham is also another hero that may benefit off of this, right? So when you're playing Spider-Ham, you want to farm minions, because Spider-Ham has a response here, Spire Nonsense. After Spider-Ham takes any amount of damage, place 1 tune counter on him. So you want to have like a minion that has like one attack for them to attack you every single turn, so you can slowly build those tune counters that you can use as if they're a wild resource and just build your economy. So this might be a useful card for Spider-Ham to just pull like a one attack minion that might be hurtful for another player. You can just drag it over to yourself, right? So I guess there's more situations where it's useful, but in the case of Spider-Ham and in the case of Stun, it's not an A tier level effect. It's probably like a B tier level effect. In the case of Thor, it is an A tier level effect, but I mean, still super situational, so it goes last in the C tier. Next, we have In-Betweener. This is a 2 cost event. Action, shuffle this card into the encounter deck without looking. So you have to pay 2 costs, play this card, and then you can shuffle it into the encounter deck. Then when it is reviewed from the encounter deck, deal 2 damage to the villain and remove this card from the game. This effect cannot be cancelled. So, I mean, I'm not the biggest fan of this card, because if you never get this card as an encounter card, then it's useless, like if it comes as a boost card, right? If you do get it as an encounter card, it's nice because you don't have to deal with another encounter card during that phase. But 2 damage is very, very lackluster, especially because you paid 2 costs for it. So the villain is giving you a lot of pressure. I don't know if you have the resources and time to play this card like in the beginning or in the middle of the game. So this card to me doesn't really see any use. It's gonna go last in D tier here. It's just 2 costs. It's a little bit expensive to get nothing out of it. It's expensive to get 2 damage out of it. It's not bad to not take an encounter card that phase, but it's not guaranteed because you have to draw as an encounter card and not get as a boost card. So to me, not a very good card at all. Next we have Into the Fray. It's a 3-cost event, hero action attack. Deal 6 damage to a minion. For each point of excess damage dealt by this attack, remove 1 threat from a scheme. So this card, I'm going to put it in the C tier. I think it's situational, but I like the effect. I think it can be built around a little bit better than the other cards. I'm going to put it actually first in the C tier, right? 3 cost is very, very expensive, but 6 damage is pretty decent for an aggression event, right? Like I was saying earlier, if it's an identity-specific attack event, you're going to get way cheaper stuff for this, right? You can probably do 6 damage for 2 costs, right? But for an aggression types, this is pretty good. You can combine this with the home technique that we were talking about earlier to do even more damage, right? It would be 9 damage because 3 plus 6. And each point of excess damage, you can remove 1 threat from the main scheme, which is useful. It's a useful way for aggression to remove threat. So I think it's a very powerful effect. It can be possibly an A tier level effect if you get the full benefits out of it, right? By removing all that threat. But it's super duper situational to use because you need to have a minion now. You need to do excess damage with this attack. And then you can only remove threat from the main scheme, so it can't be from a side scheme. So just very, very situation that you have to really build around. But if you get the full benefits of this card, I think it's very good. Next, we have a 0-cost event, Looking for Trouble, hero action Thor. Discard cards from the top of the encounter deck until you discard a minion. Put that minion into play, engage with you. Remove 3 threat from the main scheme. So this card, man, this card is a little bit hard for me to rate. Is it an A tier card? I'm gonna put it in the B tier. I'm gonna put it in the B tier right here. I think Clobber's better. I think it's better to chase him down. So Looking for Trouble, it's a hard card to rate because it has very good synergy with a lot of aggression cards, right? So all these aggression cards that we're talking about where you need a minion, Looking for Trouble is literally looking for trouble. It's searching that minion out for you. And then when you do that, you get a benefit because you can remove 3 threat from the main scheme. And if you're playing Thor, you can draw 2 cards, right? Because this put a minion engage with you. It gives you a target for Into the Fray, so you can now remove that from the main scheme. It gives you a target for, not really for this thing, right? Because it's only for a minion that's not engaged with you. It'll give you a target for Chase him down, right? Because now your hero can attack and defeat an enemy. So really, I'm putting this card this high, not because of just its effect, right? I think it was just the effect where you get a minion and remove 3 threat. It's a C tier card. It's very situational. But because it has so much synergies with all the other aggression cards, right? Like this is a minion that goes along with Bring It as well, right? So it's extra minion for you to draw an extra card. Because of that synergy with aggression, the whole aspect, I'm gonna put this card in the B tier. Yeah, I think it helps and facilitates a lot of aggression cards that deal with minions here. And actually, is it A tier? It's really hard for me to say. I think the effect itself, like getting a minion is not the best thing, especially if it's a very strong minion. But if it's a weak minion for you to trigger effects, it can be good. I'm just putting the B tier here, right? It depends. If you get a very powerful minion and you mill like most of the encounter deck, so the villain deck's out, and you get like a huge minion, obviously it's not going to be as good. But I mean, because of that super synergy with aggression cards, I think it can be good, right? Like if it didn't say discard cards on top of the encounter deck, if it just said search the encounter deck for a minion and reveal it, I'll definitely put it in A tier. But the fact that you have to discard, there might be some negative effects from discarding and then getting a really strong minion that you can't choose. So yeah, that's the reason I'm putting it in the B tier. Next we have Magic Attack. It's a 1-cost event. Play only if your identity has the Mystic trait. Max 1 per deck. Hero action attack. Choose an enemy and discard up to 5 cards from the top of your deck. Deal 1 damage to the enemy for each card discarded this way. So, I mean, you can choose how many cards you want to discard. Usually you want to discard all 5. So it's a 1-cost attack event for 5 damage, which is super duper good efficiency. This is better than like identity-specific events, right? We're just talking about how identity-specific events are a lot more efficient in terms of damage or Thor or anything than aspect events. But that is not including the Magic Attack, because Magic Attack is way more efficient. You do have to discard cards from the top of your deck. It's not the worst type of effect. It's almost, it can be good at times too, right? If you're playing with a deck with like, you know, Domino, or you're playing stuff like White Fox, right? So if you have this ally here in your deck, After White Fox is this card from top of your deck, put her into play under your control, right? There's a lot of different ways for you to manipulate and play around discarding stuff from your deck and then get a benefit out of it. So this card could actually be beneficial. It could be detrimental if you lose a good card, but I mean, I think that would just even it out to 1 cost for 5 damage, which is very, very good. This card goes in the A tier for me, and let's see, 1 cost for 5 damage. I mean, yeah, okay, I'm gonna put it above Dropkick. I think that the highest potential dropkick can be better, right? It can be S tier if you're getting that stun off on a villain that has like a nasty response for activating, right? So dropkick could be better. The potential dropkick is definitely higher, right? But magic attack is just so solid. Like 1 cost for 5 damage. It has no like fancy effect. It doesn't do anything fancy, right? Just super duper simple, but so efficient, more efficient than any identity specific event, right? So I mean that's just its crazy efficiency. I think that this has to go above the dropkick just because it's always good. And dropkick could be bad if you're playing like a villain that has stalwart, or if you don't have the physical resources, right? So even though dropkick has more potential, I think that overall magic attack just has like one of the highest floors in the game, right? It's just 1 for 5, which is insane. And we are evaluating as if we're playing with the Mystic character. So if you're playing Mystic Aggression, I mean, I think you almost have to always include magic attack unless you don't want any attack events for whatever reason. Next, we have Mean Swing, a 0 cost event. Here interrupt when your hero makes a basic attack, exhaust a weapon upgrade on your hero. Your hero gets +3 for that attack. So this is similar to the Fusillade, but I think it's much better. It is situational because you have to have a weapon, but being 0 cost, all you gotta do is make a basic attack. I think the 0 cost makes it a lot better than a Fusillade. I want to put it in the B tier here. Yeah, I'm gonna put it in the B tier. I'm gonna put it behind. I think it's definitely better than chase him down, and I'm gonna put it behind looking for trouble. So Mean Swing is also a situational card, right? So why am I putting in the B tier and not in the C tier? Well, I evaluate it kind of by its effect, right? Its effect is very, very good if you get the situational effect off, and it's very easy to play because it's just a 0 cost event. Getting +3 attack for exhausting weapon upgrade, I think that's very, very good. It's 1 card here to get +3, right? The Fusillade, for example, it's 2 cost, so plus the card itself, so it's 3 effective resources to do 5 damage. This is 1 effective resource to do 3 more. It is contingent that you have to make a basic attack with your hero, but I think that, I mean, that's fine for a card like this just because it's so cheap. I mean, it's worth it, right? And you can just throw it away if you don't want it. It's not like you're holding this for whatever reason. Like, it's just a solid +3 attack. So I think and I think that a lot of decks can really build around Mean Swing and get massive benefits out of it just because it's so cheap. It's easy to put in, it's easy to play, and I think its effect is a lot more valuable than Fusillade. But yeah, I mean, it is a little bit, or it is very dependent. So if you're playing a hero that has like a permanent weapon upgrade, like maybe like Wolverine with Wolverine's claws, or X-23 with X-23's claws, or anything like that, it could be even better, right? Because you can just exhaust that when your hero makes a basic attack. And now I'm kind of talking the Mean Swing down. Maybe I should put Mean Swing in the C tier here because I do think it's much better than Fusillade because being 0 cost just makes it so much easier to play, even though the condition is that you have to be making a basic attack, right? So your hero has to exhaust to trigger this effect, but I think it's so good. I mean, +3 is very, very good for 0 cost. So yeah, I think B tier is a good spot for it. Let me know if you guys disagree with that. Next we have Millie. This is a 3 cost event. Hero action attack, do 3 damage to an enemy, do 3 damage to another enemy, so 2 instances of attack. Yeah, doing 3 damage twice, but the thing is it can't be on 1 enemy, right? If it could be on 1 or on 2, that'll make it super duper good. But because it has to be on 2 different enemies, right? So if there's only the villain in play, you can only do 3 damage to the villain, and the other 3 damage is wasted because it's not another enemy. So, I mean, there are definitely ways to make this card good, right? If you have something to make instances of damage better. I'm going to put this card, I'll put it right here, behind Bombs Away. Right? If you have ways to increase your damage, like for instances of damage, right, then it can be very, very good. If you use like Hone Technique with this card, right, it's doing 3 + 3, so it's doing 6 twice. That makes it like even better. But I mean, it's still a situational card, and then and it's not going to help you do a big burst, right? It's a situational card because you need to have that minion out that you want to do a big damage to, and the villain out at the same time. So Yeah, I don't think this card is as good as like Hone Technique. Um, sorry, not Hone Technique, Dive Bomb, or any of the cards before. But I mean, definitely in correct situation, it can be very, very powerful. It can definitely be an A tier level effect if you can maximize and build around it. But you need to build around it for this card to be good. Next, we have Moment of Triumph. This is a zero cost event. Hero response. After you attack and defeat an enemy, deal 1 damage, or heal 1 damage, I mean, from your hero for each point of excess damage dealt to that enemy by that attack. So you have to attack and you defeat the enemy, then for each excess, you heal, right? Each point of excess, yeah. So it's similar to Into the Fray, except you're recovering instead of removing threat. I think that's not as valuable as Into the Fray, but a very similar effect. It could be useful if you need to recover, but it's not a reliable way of recovering, which I think hurts it, right? Because recovery, you generally want recovery to be more reliable than a card like this. I don't think it's terrible. I like Fusillade more. I'm gonna put this right here. I think it's better than Browbeat, but I think being able to exhaust the weapon upgrades for damage, I think it's a little bit better than Moment of Triumph. Yeah, I mean, not a terrible effect. In the correct situation, it can definitely be very good. It's just, I mean, I would prefer a more reliable way to heal. If you're relying on this card to be your only source of healing, I mean, you're probably gonna die. But yeah, I mean, it helps if you just need to recover a little bit or anything like that. This could be a useful card. It is contingent on minions, right, and excess damage, so not terrible. And one really cool thing is that you can actually combine Moment of Triumph with Into the Fray. So you play Into the Fray, do a bunch of excess damage. That amount of threat you can remove from the main scheme with Into the Fray's effect, and then you can play Moment of Triumph as a response after you attack and defeat an enemy. Right? If Into the Fray defeats that minion, which it probably will to get its effect off, anyways, you can heal by that same amount. So that's a really cool thing with it. Should I bump it up because you can make a basic attack and you can play an attack event? That's pretty useful. I'm gonna still put it here. I don't think you're getting that much. You know what? You could get crazy healing if you have like Hone Technique and you play like Into the Fray. Okay, I'm gonna put it right next to Into the Fray. I think because of its combos with aggression, right, where you're doing damage to minions, doing a bunch of excess damage, right? A lot of aggression cards combo off of that. I'm gonna put it in this higher up in the C tier because if you really maximize its full effects, it can be very good. You can get like a massive healing, right? You can, if you use Into the Fray with Hone Technique, that's 9 damage. If you do it with the minion that has 1 hit point left, 8 excess that heals you back to full, right? That's a very, very good chunk of healing. So I'm gonna put it in C tier. I think so. It's still very situational, right? I'm not moving up because it's less situational. I'm moving up because the power of its effect, I think, is like a top tier level effect if you can maximize its the requirements that you need to get the full benefit out of it. Next, we have a 2-cost event. No quarter requirement is a physical resource when paying for this card. Hero action attack. Do 4 damage to enemy for each point of excess damage dealt to that enemy by this attack. Discard a top card of your deck and add each aggression red card. Discard this way to your hand. So this card I think is also a very situational card. I'm gonna put it. I think I'm gonna put it right here. Still in front of the bombs away and behind the Moment of Triumph. Right. These guys all work with the excess damage, but because of that, they work well with each other. No quarter. The weird thing about this is if you want to be using this with Hone Technique, you need, for the 2 costs of this, one of the costs must be a physical resource and the other cost must be a mental resource, right? But if you pay the power of aggression, that can generate both the physical and mental for it, so that's pretty cool. I don't think it's that hard. If you're playing with a mental resource heavy deck, there's still easy ways to get this physical resource off for the no quarter, and then you can just draw a lot of cards, right? It can be potentially 2 for 6 damage, and then each point of excess damage, you can discard cards on top of your deck, and then add those aggression cards to your hand, which can be useful. And what's cool is that you don't have to do it on a minion, right? You can do 2 for 4 damage to any enemy, so you can hit the villain if you need to. Then there won't be excess damage, and it's not gonna be as efficient. But I mean, still decent. So if you maximize around, it can be very good to get a lot of card draw. And even if you don't, I think it's still a decent card. Next, we have 1-by-1 cost event. Hero action attack. Deal 2 damage to enemy. If this attack defeats that enemy, do 2 damage to an enemy. So you can do 2 damage to another enemy. 1 for 2 is not good. 1 for 4 is good, but it's split between 2 enemies, so it's a very situational card. I'm gonna put this similar to all the other situational cards. I'm gonna put it right here. I think it's better than Millie. I don't think it's as good as Bombs Away, which is just that great AoE type of damage. Yeah, pretty straightforward card. Next we have Out of My Way, 2 cost event, hero action, attack, deal 3 damage to enemy, 5 damage instead if that enemy has a guard or patrol keyword. So very, very dependent on that. And it's going to be only minions, right? The villain's never going to have guard or patrol. Actually, would there ever be a villain with patrol? Well, currently we don't have that, right? So actually, I think there is with these Sinister Six. I think some of the villains might get patrol, but I'm not sure. Anyways, yeah, 3 damage to enemies. So you get 2 for 5 to a minion is very, very good. 2 for 3 is not that good. I think it's one of the worser cards of that. Um, so this card right here, right? I think I put Haymaker, which is a basic card. I put Haymaker. It's a 2 cost for 3, right? I put Haymaker in the B tier here for basic for like basic events, right? But for aggression events, I think that 2 for 3 is not as good because if you're playing a card like Haymaker, you can use it in a different aspect that doesn't have that easy access to damage that aggression has, right? Aggression has straight up easier access to damage with like no quarter, where it's 2 for 4. Yeah, there's just way better options for aggression and clobber, which is a pure 2 for 3, and then you can get it back to your hand if it's the first card, if it's the first card that you play that phase. So I think that makes Out of My Way not in the B tier. I'm gonna drop it down to C tier only because it's in aggression, right? If this was like another aspect or in basic aspect, it's definitely better. But 2 for 3 is a pretty um, inefficient thing for aggression. I'm gonna put this over here above the browbeat because I mean, if you get that potential of 5, I mean, it's good. But if it's just 3, it's not gonna be as good. Okay, next we have Piercing Strike, 2 cost event. Hero action attack, deal 3 damage to the enemy. The attack gains piercing, so you can discard any tough status cards from the target before dealing damage. So pretty simple card. I like this a lot more than the other one, even though I was just talking about 2 for 3. I know this is weird, guys. So Piercing Strike is also just a 2 for 3. Not that good, but I think being able to pierce off toughs, I think it's invaluable, especially for minions that have retaliate and toughness, right? You can just do one instance of attack and get rid of the tough instead of doing 2 different attacks for it. It helps a lot for villains too. I think the tough adds a lot of value to a Piercing Strike, and if I have an empty roster spot in an aggression deck, Piercing Strike is more than happy to go in there. Definitely solid. I'm actually gonna put this above, chase him down, behind Mean Swing, because Mean Swing I think has higher potential than Piercing Strike. But Piercing Strike is just a solid card that you can just fit in any deck, really. And yeah, as long as there's piercing, it's going to be good. Even if there's not, right, and you need to do that 2 for 3 damage, you can still do it. Not the most efficient thing, but the potential of every single time there is a toughness there helps out a lot. And a lot of villains, I mean, most villains get toughness some way or another. So I think it's a very useful card. Next we have Pitchback, 1 cost event. Play only if your enemy has an aerial trait. Hero response, after your hero attacks, deal 4 damage to an enemy. So it is a hero response, so you have to attack. It doesn't have to be a basic attack. You can play an attack event, which is considered your hero attacking. So 1 for 4 is insane. I think 1 for 4 is very, very good. You do have to attack, but it's not that bad of a requirement. I think the base requirement is the aerial thing, but we are evaluating this card as if we're playing with the aerial hero. So if you're playing with the aerial hero, I think this card is a solid B tier card. It can really go in, it can really fill in for any slot. I'm going to put it... It's similar to Mean Swing, where you have to be making a basic attack, but this is a separate attack. 1 for 4. I don't think it's as good as Mean Swing, right? They have a similar condition where they have to attack. And then for this one, you have to exhaust weapon upgrade. For this one, you have to pay 1 cost. Yeah, I think Pitchback is decent. I think right here is a good spot for it. I could see it better than Mean Swing, but I'm just going to put it right here. I think it's an okay card. I think if you're playing area, I think it's more useful than Piercing Strike, because 1 for 4 is better than 2 for 3, obviously. And then you do have to deal with toughs, right, which Piercing Strike can take off. But yeah, a very solid card all around, I think. Yeah, if you're playing area, I think this is definitely a card you can fill in your deck if you have an empty roster spot. Next we have Plane of Attack, 0 cost event. Action, search the top 4 cards of your deck, top 7 cards instead if you're in Alter Ego form, right? This is not a hero action, so you can use this card in Alter Ego. Search your top 4 cards or 7 cards for an attack event and add that card to your hand, shuffle your deck. So 0 cost, you're losing 1 card out of your hand by playing it, but you get 1 card back. If you don't get an attack event, it could suck. What's nice is that you can get any attack event, so it does not have to be an aggression attack event. It can be your identity specific attack event as well. So this is a very, very powerful card. I think I'm gonna put this in the A tier here. It's nice to search through your deck and get whatever attack event you need if you don't have it. It's a very strong effect. I'm putting A tier. It's nice to get to be able to look through your deck and search for cards, but it's very contingent that you have a lot of attack events in your deck, right? If you do not have a lot of attack events, you're looking through for nothing, not going to be that good. So you got to make sure that you have those attack events in there. Playing this and losing it for nothing is not going to be good. But as long as you build around a lot of attack events, I mean, does that drop it? Yeah, I'm going to drop it down. I'm going to put this in B tier. Yeah, because you really need to build around attack events, so it makes it a little more conditional. I'm going to put it above mean swing. And the condition is really just making sure you have a lot of attack events, right? If you have that very powerful effect, A tier level, S tier level effect, if you don't have any, if you don't have that set up, then it's not going to be as good. And you want to be an alter ego to look through 7 cards, and flipping down makes it a little bit harder to do. But 4 cards it's still a decent amount if you have a lot of attack events. So not a terrible card. And you can look through your discard to see how many attack events are still left in the deck before you play this card. Next we have Precision Strike, 1 cost event, hero action attack. Deal 2 damage to an enemy. If this attack defeats that enemy, heal 2 damage from your hero. So not a crazy card. 1 cost for 2 damage. It's not terrible. Being able to, or I mean, it's kind of terrible, but being able to heal for 2, not the most beneficial effect. I'm gonna put this card in a C tier for me. And I'll put it just right here. I mean, there are times where that extra healing can be useful. It's just not that big of an effect, right? The floor is not that low, but the ceiling is not that high, right? You're just paying 1 cost to do 2 and then heal 2 if you defeat the enemy. If you don't defeat it, then you don't get the heal. So, I mean, you need to plan out to where that 2 damage defeats it. I think this is a good spot for it. I think it's a little better than out of my way, just because there's so many other ways to do damage and aggression. But I don't think it's as good as these cards right here, which have a much higher ceiling. Next we have Press the Advantage, 1 cost event, hero action attack. Do 2 damage to an enemy. If the enemy is stunned or confused, draw 1 card. So this card, man, okay, this card is hard for me to rank. This is probably going to be a really hot take here. I don't like this card a lot. I'm going to put this card in the C tier, and I'm going to put it behind these 2 cards right here with the excess damage and in front of this card. So I could be biased because of my hatred towards, or not my hatred, kind of like my bias towards not playing with stuns or confuses. So to me, Press the Advantage is literally what it sounds like, Press the Advantage. It is a win more type of card. And for me, it's much more viable to play not lose more, right? To play a card where if I'm in a losing situation, it'll help me reverse that situation and help me gain the advantage, right? Press the Advantage is only a good card in my opinion if you're already winning, right? Because 1 for 2 damage, I mean, if you're doing this 2 damage to an enemy, you want to be doing to the villain because you want to get the second effect where if the enemy is stunned. If you're stunning a minion, I mean, you don't need to do that 2 damage to it. I don't know. It's just not that big of a deal. You can just clear out the minion some other way. If they're stunned, you can just wait a turn before you clear them out. So you really want to be hitting the villain with this 2 damage. 2 damage to the villain is not going to help you out that much, especially if you need them stunned, right? It's not like it's going to help you out and make like that big final push. It's just kind of like, it might as well just be no damage, right? It's almost, and then if the enemy is stunned or confused, then you draw a card, right? So if you have a stats on the enemy, then you can draw a card. So this card is effectively free, right? So if the villain is stunned or confused, you get a free 2 damage off. And I'm like, I don't know, because you just draw the card, which counts for this card. Well, you're losing 1 effective resource because you need 1 resource to play this card. So like for me, it's kind of like, I don't know, that 2 damage to me doesn't justify what this card is, right? If you're really, I mean, I think, and I put in the C tier, and I did put it pretty high in C tier, because in a specific type of deck where you're really just rushing the villain down, trying to get them down, trying to keep them stunned, locked, or confused like the entire game, then it can be good, but it needs to be very, very high tempo, right? Where every single damage matters, right? But if you're playing any sort of like, I don't know, any game where you need to actually set up or anything like that, I don't think that this card is that good. And I think most of the toughest villains you do need to set up against. So I don't know. I'm just not that big on this card, and I think that's a kind of a hot take because I think that a lot of people put this card in A tier. Let me know what you guys think. I could be totally wrong with this. Let me know if I'm missing something, and there's something that I'm not seeing. But this card to me is not that good. Next we have a Cybo Attack. 2 cost event. Play only if your hero has the psionic trait. Hero action attack. Deal 4 damage to enemy. This attack gains range. So 2 for 4. Range is nice. Range is not as nice as piercing. Yeah, 2 for 4 is not terrible. I'm gonna put it definitely not here. Maybe around Millie. Um, so definitely better than out of my way, right? Because out of my way is a 2 for 3 or a 2 for 5. This is just a 2 for 4 all the time. I would prefer that and gains the ranged. Um, I think it's I think that makes it better than the precision strike. Um, Fusillade yet to exhaust. Yeah, no, I think it makes it better than Fusillade as well. Um, and actually better than the melee. Yeah, so I'm actually have it right here. I think melee needs way more setup. This card is like another one of those things where it doesn't need any setup. You can just play right away, right? Like the Fusillade, the Precision Strike, these all have conditions, right? But the Cybo Attack, it just does 2 for 4. Very, very low floor, or sorry, very, very high floor, I mean. But the ceiling, the potential of this card is not as good as the potential of these cards behind it. Even the Out of My Way has more potential, right? Because it can be a 2 for 5. But I think that just having that high floor makes it more valuable because these cards have a way lower floor if you're not getting the conditions off. So yeah, definitely a decent type of card. I'm putting in the hmm, I'm putting in the C tier here, but yeah, I mean, I think that aggression just has other ways to do damage. I don't think this is like the most. Yeah, I think just 2 for 4, like just pure type of attacks, type of stuff is not going to be that good in the aggression aspect. It's really good in a different aspect or in the basic aspect, but I think for aggression, you have so many different ways to do damage. Having a fairly efficient type of damage isn't that good. It's good if you have like a crazy efficient damage like the magic type, which is 1 for 5. But I mean, yeah, I think this is not the. If I have an empty roster spot in an aggression deck, and I'm playing Psionic, I think the Precision Strike like goes in a little bit more useful than the Cybo Attack because the piercing is way more useful than the range, even though the Cybo Attack is 1 more damage than the Piercing Strike. Next we have a Psychic Assault, 2 cost event. Play only if your identity has the Psionic trait. Hero action attack, do 3 damage to an enemy, confuse that enemy. So yeah, I mean it's 2 for 3. We're going to value this card as we have the Psionic trait with our hero. Getting a confuse off of a 2 for 3. I mean, it's such a super duper cheap way. And if you don't need to confuse the villain, you can just be 2 for 3 on the minion or anything like that. I think this is a super solid card. If you're playing Psionic, Aggression, I mean, I think that this is kind of. I don't think it's an all include because of Stalwart and Steady, but I think it's better than Precision Strike. I think I'm going to put it. See, if you're playing Psionic, 2 for 3 and you just get to confuse right off. I mean, that is pretty good. Is this an A tier card? I'm gonna move it up. It's at worst, I think B tier. How valuable is that type of like confuse right there? Such an easy way to get it confused. I'm gonna put it in the A tier here. I'm gonna put it behind Dive Bomb. I think Dive Bomb has way more potential, but Dive Bomb just has a very very low floor. If you're just getting it as a super expensive, 4 for 7, but its potential is massive. Psychic Assault, very very high floor, right? Like just 2 costs for 3 damage, super duper cheap, and you get that confuse off, so you can flip down right away. Yeah, it's almost just 2 for a confuse, which is very good as well. Yes, I think this definitely goes in A tier. It's nothing crazy, right? You're just getting a confuse off, and it's definitely going to be useless against stalwart enemies, right? But I mean, still is super super good effect and super duper cheap. Yeah, so I'm gonna put this in A tier. Next we have Quick Strike, so 2 cost event. Hero action attack, do damage to an enemy equal to your attack. So this is similar to the As one that we were talking about earlier, right? If you have a card like, if you're playing around it and you're playing stuff like Brute Force, where your hero gets +1 attack, but if you attack, you have to discard Brute Force. Quick Strike is a great way to do damage without making a basic activation, right? So you can just hoard on all those Brute Forces, build up your attack, play a Quick Strike, do a bunch of damage, and then you can still attack if you're already going to build it down, or you can just keep those Brute Force and you can like Thor or do something else with your basic activation. So yeah, I mean, Quick Strike is definitely better than As 1. I think it's strictly a better version, even though As 1 has these other type of effects here. I think Quick Strike is a lot easier to build around, but it's still not an amazing card, right? I think it's just a decently situational card if you build around it. I'm gonna put this card. I'll put it right here above Millie. Yeah, because if you build around it, it can be very very good. You can definitely build decks around it, but yeah, I think this is a good spot for it. It's not as good as Cybo Attack, which just has that crazy good floor. Because Quick Strike could be pretty useless if you don't build your attack. Actually, it's completely useless, right? If you have 2 attack, 2 for 2 is terrible. Yeah, so you definitely want to build around it, but I think its potential can be pretty good if you do build around it. Next, we have another original OG event from the core box, just like the Chase Them Down here that we ended up putting in the B tier. So we have Relentless Assault. It's a 2-cost event, hero action attack. Do 5 damage to min. If you pay for this card using a physical resource, this attack gains overkill. So any excess damage goes over. So the only limiting thing on this card is that you have to use it on a minion. But, I mean, is this A tier or is this B tier? Man, I really like this card. I'm gonna put it A tier here. So, I mean, 2 for 5 is so good. 2 for 5 is insane. The only thing that limits it a little bit, I mean, okay, it's not 2 for 5 is not insane, but 2 for 5 is very, very good. It's not the most efficient thing compared to identity specific events, but it's just a cheap way to get an easy 5 damage. And then the thing why I like this card, even though it's only for minions, is that it works in decks where it works even if you're not playing archetype, where you're trying to get minions out and trying to like have minions swarm you, because minions are part of board control. Right? Getting rid of minions help you control the board, so that's a very, very useful effect to be able to do damage to those minions. And then if you pay for the physical resource, you can do overkill, so you can bleed damage over to the villain, which works so well with guard, like guard minions, or you can just bleed damage over. I think it's just a super solid card all around. No, I think I have to put it in the B tier, so I'm gonna put this card first in the B tier. And the reason why it goes here, I don't think it's a card that you build around when you're making a deck, right? These are kind of like build around type cards, right? Psychic Assault, you can really build around, right? You can put the plan to confuse lock the villain in aggression. Dive Bomb you build around with home technique, bring it you build around it. Dropkick stun locking the villain. Magic Attack, I mean, you don't need to build around, but it's just so good. It's like almost an auto include for aggression mystics, right? But Relentless Assault, if you have an empty roster spot in an aggression deck, this card is kind of like the first card that I look to put in there. But it's not strong enough in effect to where I can build around it. It's just a very, very good effect, very, very high floor, just a super easy to play, strong card. But yeah, I don't think it's necessary on the tier of the on the level of the A tier cards. I mean. Next we have Skill Strike, 0-cost event. When your hero makes a basic attack, it gets +2 for that attack. So this card is very similar to Mean Swing, right? But you don't need to exhaust a weapon upgrade. Instead of 3 attack for the Mean Swing, it is 2 attack. But despite that, I think the Skill Strike is actually much better than Mean Swing because it doesn't have that condition. You do have to be making a basic attack, but so is the Mean Swing. So it for sure goes above the Mean Swing, and it can go in any deck really. So I'm gonna put it. I'm getting +2. Yeah, no, it actually just goes here actually because it's still in a similar style as the Mean Swing. This works really well for Ghost Spiral aggression, but I mean, other than that, I don't really see too many uses for it, right? You have to make your basic attack, you get +2 for it. It's a really cheap way to get that, right? It's just 1 card, so 1 effective resource for 2 more damage tied behind making a basic attack. But these cards right here just have way more higher potential. They have more combos you can do, I think. I could put Skill Strike a little bit higher. No, I'm gonna put it here. I think it's definitely better than Mean Swing. 1 less attack is not that bad for not having to exhaust a weapon upgrade. But yeah, I mean, in the case of like weapon upgrades I don't need to be exhausted to use, Mean Swing would surely be better in a situation like that, right? So there are situations where Mean Swing is better than Skill Strike, but most of the time I think Skill Strike is better. Okay, next we have Smash the Problem. It's a 1-cost event. Hero action Thor. Exhaust your hero. Remove threat from a scheme equal to your hero's attack. So this works really well with stuff like the Quick Strike, right? Where you're using, I think we still have it pulled up here, Brute Force. Build up your attack. Then you can play this card, and then you can remove a bunch of threat. Smash the Problem. It still goes in a C tier for me because you really have to build up your attack. I think it's better than Quick Strike because having a way to remove threat while building up that attack is a lot more useful. But it's the same type of card to me, just for threat removal instead of attack. And I'm gonna still put it behind the Cybo Attack, even though I think the threat removal is more valuable because you have to exhaust your hero, right? The Quick Strike you don't have to exhaust, you can just play it. Smash the Problem. Not only is it 1 cost, but you have to exhaust your hero, so you can't make a basic Thor activation, you can't make a basic attack activation. You just kind of stand there, you get exhausted, you pay a cost, and you can remove that from a scheme equal to your hero's attack, right? Most of the time, it might get up to 3 attack, 4 attack, 5 attack. Right, if you get any more than 5, it's crazy good, but if it's anywhere less than that, I mean, 1 cost and exhaust to remove 5 threat, I think it's kind of where you want to be. You need to really get more attack on your hero and remove more threat to make this card worth it, because that exhaust can be a Thor activation itself, right? So most heroes, I think the standard for hero is having 2 Thor. So if you exhaust the Thor for 2, and then if this card is doing you 5, right, that means you're paying 1 to remove 3 threat, which is decent, but it's just contingent because you have to build up your hero's attack stat up to 5, right? So because you have to build up to 5 to use it, I think that holds it back a little bit for just a 1 for 3 threat removal, right? With all that stuff that I was just talking about, which is probably a little bit complicated, but I hope that made sense. I don't even know if I'm making sense talking about it, but yeah. So I think it's a decent card. It helps a lot. It helps out a lot in that type of archetype where you're trying to build your hero's attack and not necessarily make basic attacks, right? And that really goes around the brute force card right here. And it's all the way to remove threat and aggression. Okay, so next we have surprise attack. 1 cost event, hero response attack after you change form. Do 3 damage to an enemy, 4 damage instead if you pay for this card using a physical resource. So it's a hero response, so you can only play this when you change from alter ego to hero form, right? You can't play this from changing to hero form to alter ego because you have to be in hero form to play this card. This card works really well with heroes like Wasp and Ant-Man, right? Because Wasp here, right, she has a hero form, her tiny hero form, and she has her giant hero form. So if she switches from giant over to tiny or tiny over to giant, then you can play the surprise attack and just still be in hero form where you want to be doing damage, and you can do an extra damage, right? 1 for 4. So surprise attack for me is a C tier level card. Very good effect, but it's C tier because you need to be playing heroes or a deck that can flip a lot, right? If you're not building around flipping a lot, it's not gonna be that good. I think it's definitely better for Wasp, Ant-Man, Angel, those type of heroes if you're playing aggression in them, with them. Is it first? No, I'm gonna just put it here. I think because at the end of the day, it's just 1 for 4 damage, which is good, super efficient, right? Very, very efficient. But I think these cards have way more higher potential, and I like the potential that these cards give, even though surprise attack has a higher floor, right? I just value the potential of these cards a lot more, right? Insert Fray to remove threat, moment charm to heal you by a bunch, right? I think that's very valuable and more valuable than just damage. Next, we have a 1 cost event, Team Strike. Play only if your identity has the X-Men trait. Hero action attack, exhaust your hero and any number of X-Men allies. Deal X damage among enemies in play, where X is the total attack of the characters you exhausted this way. So evaluating this card as we're playing with the X-Men hero. Exhaust your hero and any number of X-Men allies is the cost of it, right? So you have to exhaust your hero at least and do X damage, where X equals the total attack. Yeah, so this is very, very similar to the As 1, but it's going to be for X-Men. So I think it's better than the As 1 because the fact that it's all X-Men, it's easier to have a deck with all X-Men than a deck with Avengers and Guardians. For multiplayer, it's kind of the same because it's a lot easier to get that Avengers and Guardian thing for multiplayer, right? And then you can do damage equals to all the enemies in play. Yeah, I mean, this card will work well with stuff like Brute Force. Yeah, I mean, I can see situations where it's good, but I think it's definitely better than the As 1 because it's only 1 cost. But even then, I mean, you really have to build a lot around it. Let's see, in the C tier, I'm gonna put it right here. I think it has decent potential if you really build around it, right? Have a bunch of super strong allies. Don't want them taking consequential damage, which a lot of times with X-Men allies, you don't want them to because X-Men allies can really build up with their training upgrades. You can exhaust all of them, and you can do a lot of damage for just 1 cost. But everyone does get exhausted, so they could just do a basic activation. But because it's X-Men, I'm going to give this card more of a pass, but it's still not the best card. You really still need a lot of setup. You want to build your hero's attack to get the full benefits out of this card. So it's definitely still a C tier card, a very situational card, but I think it can be very good if you maximize it. Next, we have a 0 cost event, the best defense, Hero Interrupt. When your hero defends an attack, use its attack instead of its defense for its attack. So this card is really only going to be good if your hero has a very high attack stat. But even in that case, you don't want to be using your basic activation for a defense activation, right? You want to be attacking. This card, I mean, similar to Smash the Problem and Quick Strike, but it's a defense variant of it, right? But I think it's definitely the worst of the 3. So at most, it's going to go right behind a Quick Strike. Let me see. I mean, if you play those brute strengths or brute forces, right, and you get your attack, right, up to like, I don't know, 5, 6, and you're playing the best defense. I mean, the thing is, you still have to exhaust to defend. You won't get ready. I think that because you have to exhaust to defend to trigger this card's effect, it makes it just really, really situational. I think this is actually the worst C tier card, even more situation than Get Over Here, because not only do you need to be playing that way with the Smasher Problem and Quick Strike, but you need to be defending, and you need to exhaust yourself to defend. And I mean, it might not block an attack. Like defending is one of the least efficient things to do in Marvel Champions because you can usually just recover for more, and then you can't play with all the protection, like perfect defense type stuff, anyways. So in aggression, you're not getting the full benefits if you're just defending. So yeah, I mean, this card very, very situational. So it's gonna go last in the C tier for me. Next we have Toe to Toe. One cost event, hero action attack. Choose an enemy. That enemy attacks you. Do 5 damage to the enemy. So, oh man, this card is hard to rate as well. I think in some situations it can be very good. You have to take an attack and you have to survive the attack, right? If you get defeated, because this is a hero action attack, if you get defeated, you can't do 5 damage to an enemy because you're already dead. So you have to have the enemy attack you. The thing is, you can just have an ally block, and you can do 5 damage to an enemy, so that's very nice. And then it shoots any enemy. You can choose a minion, right? So it's a great way to defeat a minion, right? If there's a minion that has like, you know, 1 attack and like 5 hit points and has like a nasty effect for whatever reason, you can just toe to toe it, have it hit you for 1, and you do 5 damage to it, right? 1 for 5 is very good. That's what we're talking about, the magic attack. I'm gonna put toe to toe in the B tier because of its versatility with minions, but I'm put it last, right? Because similar to chasing down, I think it's chasing down. You have to have a minion. Toe to toe, I think it's more useful for minions or when you're making a big final push at the villain. But if you're making that big final push at, like, let's say Ronin, I mean, Ronin attacks you, he might kill you. You have an ally block, he may get lucky and get overkill for it, or you might get a boost that gives him piercing. You have toughness, right? So I think for tougher scenarios, this card's not gonna be as good. But if you have an empty roster spot in the deck, I mean, I think toe for toe can easily fit in there to just help you do that 5 damage whenever you need it to either min or to the villain for a big push. So it's not the best effect to take an attack, but I mean, 1 for 5 is a pretty cheap way to do that extra damage if you need it. Next, we have another OG event from the core box, Uppercut, 3 cost event, hero action attack, do 5 damage to enemy. So this is super duper inefficient, right? 3 for 5. It's like way worse than like any other identity specific event, right? Because Spider-Man's swinging web kick, which is like, and I'm sure you guys all know this card, but I just pull it up anyway. So swinging web kick is kind of your standard curve for, I didn't pull up, swinging web kick, right? So this is kind of your standard curve for identity specific attack events. 3 costs for 8 damage, right? And every identity specific event is going to be around this, right? 3 for 8. Did I just say 5? Yeah, 3 for 8, I mean. So Uppercut here is only 3 for 5. Very, very inefficient. If you run a card like this, you really, like, I don't know, like you really just don't have anything else in your deck that you want to put in, right? And if you draw a swing web kick, you much rather play that than an uppercut. So there are situations where this card can be good, right? With Hone Technique, it's 3 for 8. But even then, it's still just right at the level of an identity-specific attack event, right? Not any better than that. So because of that, it's still a situation. I think it's going to go into C tier. I think it's still better than the best defense. I think it's better than actually a lot of these cards here. I'm going to put it right here. If you build a lot around it, it can be decent, right? By using Hone Technique. So it's 3 plus 5. It becomes an 8 cost. And then it's really going to be the ceiling's not very high with this card, which is why it goes so low in the C tier. But I think it has a decent-ish floor, right? Because if you are playing in a deck where you just want a bunch of damage, a bunch of attack, then Uppercut can help just fill out more big instances of damage. But that is really only if you're playing with Hone Technique. If you're not playing with Hone Technique, I would not include this card at all. I mean, 3 for 5 is not good. We just saw so many different other ways to do 5 damage, right? And sure, they have a certain type of thing, right? Like Fusili, you have to exhaust a weapon upgrade that you control, right? There's more like contingencies or more restrictions, I mean, and limitations on other cards, but a straight 3 for 5 is terrible, right? If we're looking at magic attack, it's a 1 for 5, right? I mean, I just think that this card is not going to be that good. But C tier because you can build around it and try to make it good. But even then, its highest potential is like a B tier level card. It's not ever going to be like, its effect can never be super duper powerful. It's just going to be decent at best. Finally, our last aggression event is You'll Pay for That. It's a 1-cost event. Hero response. After the villain attacks you, remove 1 threat from a scheme for each damage you took from that attack to a max of 4. So it's a response after the villain attacks you, and then you can remove 1 threat from a scheme for each damage you took. This is a hero response Thor activation, so if you are confused, this will just remove the confuse. It's not that good a card in my opinion because you have to take so much damage to get the full effects out right. There's no way to mitigate that damage. For this card, you want to be taking damage, but then normally you don't want to be taking damage because if you're taking a lot of damage, you're close to dying, right? I mean, it's just a normal thing to not want to take damage, but this card makes you kind of want to. But it's capped out at 5 too, right? So if you take like 10 damage, it would be super cool. You can remove 10 threat from a scheme, but there's no way to really like take advantage of this card and really like, break it because it's capped off here at 5. So 1 for 5 threat removal is very good and very efficient, but I think that the requirement that you need to pay for it, it's pretty hefty. You can't block out that damage. You have to take the full 5 damage. I think this card is unplayable as well. I think all these cards are unplayable, but I'll just put this one first as the unplayable card. Yeah, I mean, the villain has to attack you. It's a Thor activation. You have to take damage. Like if it's just an attack, you don't have to take damage, then it's better. But I mean, you have to take damage. And if you take like, let's say you take 3 damage, which isn't that bad. You play 1 for 3. I mean, that's not bad, but then like at the cost of taking damage, like I don't know. I think this card is, there's almost no situation where I want to play this card. Even if I'm playing Peter Parker Spider-Man where Aine can heal me like crazy, I don't want to be just taking this damage, just remove that amount of threat. Yeah, this card to me is kind of unplayable. Maybe even lower than, actually, I'm gonna actually put it behind In-Betweener. I think In-Betweener, taking out that encounter card, because whenever you get as an encounter card, you won't be revealing another encounter card, right? It replaces one. I think that's going to be, even though there's a low chance of that happening, or not low, but like not a good chance, not a guaranteed chance of that happening, right? You're taking a risk with it. I think it's still better than You'll Pay for that. I think this is the worst aggression event in the game. I could be wrong. Definitely let me know what if you guys see something that I'm totally missing. Yeah, this is not a card that I've ever used, so I could be missing like a very valuable effect with it. But yeah. There we have it, guys. This is my aggression event tier list. Let's see how everything lined up. Okay, I don't have any aggression events in the S tier, so I don't think there are any auto includes. I think these A tier cards right here are very, very good. And yeah, we have a lot of situation cards. I think that makes sense for aggression because I think a lot of aggression stuff is very situational. It's dependent on minions, dependent on weapon upgrades, just a lot of stuff like that. So, and dependent on excess damage as well. So I think this kind of lined up how I thought it would. Let me know what you guys think of my list here. Let me know if there's anything that you agree or disagree with. And yeah, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.